Hello, and welcome to the Longev Lens. Please join my co-host, Dr. Sebastian Pedersen, and I as we cut through the noise and hype around longevity, health, and wellness, and turn the latest evidence into honest, practical insight for living better for longer.
And just a quick disclaimer before we dive in, this podcast is for educational purposes only and doesn't constitute medical advice. If you have a healthcare problem, please consult your doctor or qualified healthcare professional.
Welcome back to the Longev Lens, where we're going to be going through genetic testing for today for our rapid fire concept. And today with this one, we want to try to focus on clearing out some of the more trendy types of genetic testing, like your 23andMe's and like the Ancestry.com type of things, versus genetic testing for medical issues. So, Dr. Seb, welcome back again. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Where do we start with genetic testing for today? What would be the really the big things that we want to focus on with this topic?
Yeah, I think for me it's education. I think a lot of people, especially when I speak to family members, friends, clients, is we don't, as a health profession, we don't do enough of educating people about the different types of genetic tests. So they're assumed that every genetic test is equal, and that's not necessarily the case. So what I mean by that is you have the more direct-to-consumer or the genetic tests that an individual can purchase online, and then you have the clinically validated ones that you need to go through a health professional to get. So that's sort of the two genetic tests I'd love to break down and get people to understand when you do one versus the other, and ultimately how does it change how do we use the data to actually improve your health, maximize your health span, and actually make that data actionable. So I think the direct-to-consumer or the genetic test you can purchase online, like you said, there's the 23andMe, there's MyDNA, Ancestry, yes. They're more like for fun and curiosity. They're less, or they aren't regulated, so the actual accuracy of the tests aren't as good as the clinically validated ones. Plus they test for things like how you process certain nutrients, but they also give you like 30 to 50 page reports. So it's a lot of information, and unless you have someone with you guiding you through that journey, it's very hard for people to actually implement that data into their daily life. So they always become overwhelmed with all this data. Well, yeah, this is a cool report, but what do I actually do with it? Which is, I find, the most problematic, or the most difficult thing using those direct-to-consumer testing.
We've had a couple of clients that are doing like the Nutripath type of ones.
Yep.
Is that similar as
Yeah,
the same
correct,
thing? It's like
correct.
a huge report.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
I've spoken to a couple of them, and they've said that they did actually find out they picked out a few things that helped them with just like some food issues or food choices, lifestyle choices.
Exactly right.
So things like that, it's small things that can be quite helpful. But again, as you say, they're not as medically indicated.
Correct.
So they're the big differences that we want to try to make sure.
You're spot on. You're spot on. It's exactly what you said. It's exactly what I see as well. You get like a 50-page report, and there might be 2 or 3 markers that you actually implement. And then it's important you have someone with you to guide you through that journey. Otherwise, it's just overwhelming. Whereas on the flip side, the ones that I mostly use are the clinically validated genes or genetic testing, which is testing for genes that increase the risk of cancer, heart disease, metabolic conditions, and more. So they're directly related to increased risk of, as I said, diseases, which means that if someone gets these tests done and something shows up positive, then we can personalize any future screening or preventative strategies so that it doesn't actually manifest as a problem long term.
So when would this be indicated?
Yep. So I mean, gold standard for me, like I would love for everyone to get a clinically validated genetic test when they're born. Like when we had Jasper 2 years ago, we had you get the pin prick on their foot. They take a bit of blood, they put it on a piece of paper, and they send it off to the lab looking for inborn errors of metabolism or other common conditions in an infant or a newborn. But we never heard back as to what actually happened. So it's more that this is usual sort of thing where you get a test or you go to your doctor and they're like, we'll let you know if something's wrong. Whereas for me, it's like, well, you have to first of all close that loop. But because about between 8 to 10% of all people have a genetic predisposition to a certain disease, that's just quite a large number. And the fact is almost none of us get any genetic tests done unless we've had multiple first-degree relatives with things like breast cancer or bowel cancer. Then in a reactive fashion, it's offered, but we don't get any genetic testing from early in life that can then set up to make sure that we don't have any issues going forward. Or if we do have issues, it's picked up early and managed appropriately early.
So you actually had that experience where you did the testing with the doctors and then you
Yeah,
didn't
for
hear anything
Jasper.
back.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you follow that up further?
No,
No?
we didn't, because it's in the public system. So it's super
Okay.
hard to get access to that data.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're working in the system, you can try to get it from the medical records department, but it's not a very open source sort of communication.
Yeah, okay. And so when you're doing the medically indicated genetic testing,
Yep.
what is there any particular markers that you're really looking for, or is it it's always based on the person, or
Yeah,
what
good
is it?
question. For me, the panel that we use, my initial priority is always cancer and cardiovascular disease. All the other tests that are included are more add-ons for me. And why I say that is because cancers, like if you have breast cancer, if you have bowel cancer, if you have cervical cancer, now lung cancer, then there's a screening program in Australia, right? But if you have any of the other cancers, whether that be pancreatic cancer, brain cancer, or ovarian cancer, all the cancers that aren't screening programs, and if someone gets these cancers, it gets put down to bad luck, which for me is I don't find that acceptable. I would want to enable everyone to have complete control over their health, and one thing they need to know is their genetic data. So what I look for is always those big ticket items, so the cancer, the heart disease, so that we can customize any screening programs if that's relevant for this person. So if they have their genetic test and it shows their increased risk of pancreatic cancer, for example, which is a very hard disease to pick up early, and often when you pick it up, it's late stage, which can have significant consequences, then if we have a genetic predisposition, then we start targeting or customize a screening program for that individual based on their genetic risk, rather than just not offering them anything, which is what would have happened if they didn't get this genetic test in the first place.
How much of the population can you actually predict cancer, or how much of the genetic testing is actually relevant?
Yeah, I mean, for some cancers, it's very relevant. Like if you have the BRCA1s and 2s for terms of breast cancer. So some genes are more correlated with increased risk of cancer. Some are just like a low to moderate risk.
You said BRCA genes
for breast and ovarian cancers.
Yep.
And then, so it also depends on the genes. But for me, it's you get the genetic data first to see, okay, is there any genetic predispositions that I need to be aware of? Because ultimately what I want to do with all of our clients when we see them is I need to make sure that we take care of any short-term risks before we can focus on long-term risks. And what I mean by that, is there any undetected risk, such as very high risk of cancer, that hasn't been picked up, that we need to pay attention to now before we can focus on things like lifestyle optimization, which is a lifelong commitment. So that's the data that I use in terms of getting that genetic data so that we can customize any intervention for that person at this point in time.
And if something did come up in someone's genetic testing, I guess if we exclude lifestyle changes, what other sort of changes would you be looking to work into the person's plan?
Other than like screening for conditions?
Yeah, like treatment-wise, would there be medications that you'd go down?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends. Like for cancers, it's mostly screening. Like there's not obviously optimizing lifestyle can reduce the risk of cancers, things like that. But if you have any things like a genetic risk for significant arrhythmias, which can predispose you to sudden cardiac death, then you do regular ECGs. You obviously monitor their exercise. So it's very personalized based on the gene. So because there's so many, we use about 200 genes, and then it's slightly different for each gene that we detect. It is very hard just to give sort of a default thing of other things we do.
Okay. And so how much we've had this question before.
Yep.
It's actually from one of my friends as well. They just wanted to know, how much does genetics actually play a role in, let's say, like serious health adverse events and cardiovascular disease, stroke, that sort of stuff?
There's definitely a genetic predisposition. Some genes are increased risk of these conditions significantly. Like from a stroke perspective, you could have a clotting disorder or a genetic clotting disorder, which increases your risk of stroke. Also, the question that I get a lot, which is probably easier to answer, and I might be skirting around the question a little bit, but I can come back to it, is in terms of lifestyle versus genetics in terms of overall longevity, which is a question we often get as well. And like there's a Danish twin study published quite a while ago now showed that your genetics have about a 20 to 30% correlation with your health span or lifespan, in terms of longevity, whereas your lifestyle is about 70% or 70, 80%. So in terms of overall longevity, lifestyle factors actually have a bigger impact than just only genetics.
It's way bigger. It's not not just bad luck. It's actually a massive difference.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, again, we've spoken about it before. If they haven't listened, that it's more encouraging.
Yep, that's exactly right. You've got a lot more control over your overall health and health trajectory than people realize.
Is there anything else that we're sort of missing that we'd like to cover with genetics as well that you really want to make sure people know about in terms of what's going to give you the best data, what's going to give you the best bang for your buck?
As a recommendation, I always recommend everyone to have at least an understanding of the clinically important genotypes, so things that increase risk of cancer, metabolic conditions, heart disease. And if they then want to go further after that, then yes, do the extra, like the MyDNA, the Nutripath testing, which is the massive reports. But what I do recommend is have...
What was that one?
The MyDNA. It's like through Nutripath.
Yep.
With those ones, yes, definitely if you're interested and you're curious, go get it, but make sure you have someone with you who can guide you through that. And I know there's specific geneticists or doctors as well, actually, who are very interested in that space. Just make sure you engage one of those who can actually interpret and thus make any data or important data from that report actionable in your daily life.
Do you do that personally? Like, is genetics a big part of what you do?
We do more of the clinically important genetic testing first, and then down the track, if we need to, we can add the other ones on top.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any within Australia that you'd recommend if people were going to
Not
go see
particularly.
Like a geneticist?
I mean, one person that I met here earlier this week, actually here on the Gold Coast, works directly with a geneticist who then offers it and then has a one-on-one conversation to guide you through the entire journey. And I think that would be the important thing, rather than just going through a company. Make sure you have a clinician recommending, okay, why this one over that one, and to get a bit of guidance rather than just buying something on a website and hoping for the best.
There was something I found that was quite interesting, was that if you do get genetic testing and if it's medically validated, it may possibly change your insurance.
It can, exactly right. It can, especially if it's a premium, was it $500,000, I believe? But that's under review at the moment. I know there is legislation that's slowly being passed and hopefully that will go through next year, where health insurance or life insurance companies, can't discriminate based on genetics.
Okay.
So, which means that at the moment, if they ask you, do you have any genetic predispositions or genetic risk factors we should be aware of, you would have to disclose it. Whereas after this legislation's passed, because they can't discriminate, you don't have to disclose it, and thus it won't have an impact on your life insurance premiums.
Okay. And if you were to find something on these genetic tests, are there certain ones that you should let your family know, like close family know?
Definitely. Especially so the ones that we do, it only gives us back a positive result if there is a actual increased risk of a medical condition. And in that context, depending on the type of gene, I always recommend all of our clients to inform, especially first degree relatives, but even second degree relatives, depending on what you find in the first degree relatives. Okay.
What sort of genes would come up in that sort of case?
So the big ones, there's the mismatch mutations, there's the BRCA genes, there's some arrhythmia genes. It's a massive panel, and to be honest, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But the biggest ones for me are just the heart disease and the cancer ones.
Awesome, cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
Not really. No. I mean, just for people to know that there's two different types of genetic tests, and encourage everyone to at least get an understanding of anything they can't change, which is just your genetics, but what you can change is how you're monitored and how you're managed with that certain risk if you have something.
Yeah, I think that 70 to 80% of your result or lifespan, lifestyle, all that sort of stuff probably makes the biggest difference, which I think is probably one of the best things that we want to encourage, that it's not just bad luck, that it's not just, that's the cards that you dealt with. You can make these changes earlier in your life. That's what the genetic testing, that's whether exactly they're medically validated for, as opposed to ones that, you said, they're more sometimes for fun. It's interesting to know where some things come from. It might help you change some food choices.
Exactly right.
But will they actually change long-term health? Awesome. Thank you for that, Dr. Seb. And that'll wrap it up for today's Rapid Fire. Thank you.